My husband left for work with a smile and a suitcase. I followed him to his office and found a secret nursery behind a locked door. I parked 2 blocks away and walked into his building like I belonged there. Then I found something that changed everything. He hugged a coworker in the lobby and looked normal, like a man with a meeting. He told the receptionist he had an early flight, but his badge opened a different hallway. Things started feeling off when his phone kept lighting up at night, and he locked his laptop. Then I found baby clothes in his messenger bag. He had been distant for months and called it stress at work. Then I found a small pacifier taped under his desk. I used to trust him without thinking. Then I found a crib tucked behind a storage closet with stickers that said Daddy. He wore nice shirts and kept kissing my forehead before he left. Then I found a wall covered in photos of a baby with his same crooked smile. My legs went numb and my throat closed. Then I found onesies folded with a hospital wristband inside showing a date last month. I stood in the hallway and texted an old friend to keep me calm. Then I found a tiny pair of socks with initials that matched his. I went into the bathroom and breathed until my hands stopped shaking. Then I found a framed ultrasound on the shelf with my husband's name written in block letters on the back. Every step into that locked room felt like stepping into a lie. Then I found a calendar marked with feeding times and nursery shifts. He built a whole life inside his office while telling me he worked late. Then I found a book titled How to Be a Good Dad with his hairline in the selfie note. I took pictures because I couldn't trust my memory. Then I found a small blanket embroidered with a name I didn't know. The name on the blanket wasn't mine or ours. Then I found a notarized custody note with his signature and a woman's printed name. My chest felt squeezed. Then I found a receipt for a baby shower venue dated 2 weeks ago with his credit card ending in the same digits as our joint card. I thought maybe it was for a charity or a coworker. Then I found a stack of maternity photos with the same woman whose name matched the custody note. I walked out of the room and my brain tried to make sense of nothing. Then I found a key taped under the nursery door frame with numbers that matched his house keys. I sat in my car and stared at the city until the memory of him smiling this morning broke me. Then I found a message thread on my phone from an unknown number asking if he could pick up formula tonight. I drove home slow because I didn't know what to do next. Then I found a receipt on our kitchen counter for a plane ticket to the city where the woman lived. He had kissed me goodbye that morning and said he'd be back late. Then I found a picture on his phone of the baby asleep in his arms, timestamped 10 hours before. My hands were cold as I slid the back door open. Then I found a small stuffed bear in the dryer, like it had been washed in our house. I called him and pretended everything was normal. He answered with a laugh and said he was stuck at work. Then I found a voicemail on his phone from someone calling him Daddy. I walked upstairs and stared at our bed where he had slept last night. Then I found a faint smell of baby lotion in our sheets that wasn't mine. I wanted to wake him up and say something, anything, to prove I wasn't insane. Then I found an envelope on his nightstand labeled for emergencies with a different woman's handwriting on it. He came home smelling like coffee and cologne, and I asked if a coworker needed help. He smiled and said yes, big project. Then I found a dried splotch of formula on his collar. That night he rolled toward me and hugged me like we hadn't just broken. I kept my mouth closed and watched him sleep. Then I found a text on his unlocked phone that read, I love you, see you at 8. I couldn't sleep and I didn't want to wake him. I packed a small bag and left quietly for the office. Then I found the spare key he'd hidden under the potted plant near our garage. I walked into the building and used the key to get past the receptionist. The elevator felt louder than usual. Then I found the nursery light already on, like someone had expected me. The hallway smelled like baby powder and lemon. I followed the scent and then found a handwritten note on the nursery door that said, please knock, but come in, Daddy needs help. I opened the door and found small shoes lined up on a shelf in a row. Then I found a name tag stuck to the closet that matched the initials on the blanket. My heart hammered and my stomach dropped. Then I found a stash of printed emails where he'd been emailing the woman about nursery supplies and school options. He was sitting in a rocking chair and turned when I walked in. He had nothing in his hands. Then I found a framed letter on the shelf addressed to him from her mother, thanking him for being there. He said he had planned a surprise for me later that week. He tried to smile. Then I found a sonogram envelope with my handwriting on the back that I had never written. I demanded answers and he said we could talk at home calmly. Then I found his face go pale when I asked about the baby's name, and he stammered like he'd been rehearsing lies. I recorded everything with my phone because I couldn't trust my head. Then I found a pile of baby clothes with tags still on showing the store and price. He blamed work stress and said he hadn't meant to hide anything. Then I found text messages where he said he couldn't tell me because I'd never forgive him. I asked why he didn't tell me, and he said it wasn't his place. Then I found a contract on the desk showing he'd signed legal guardianship for weekends. I wanted to throw things, scream, run. I stayed quiet and watched his jaw clench. Then I found a receipt for a ring he bought months ago and hid in the back of a drawer. He said the woman had asked him to help and he couldn't say no. Then I found a photo of him at a park with the baby and her parents smiling like a family. He stood up and tried to take the phone from my hand. I stepped back instinctively. Then I found a diaper bag with my name faintly scribbled on a post-it, like someone had copied it. He grabbed his jacket and said he had to go meet someone now. I grabbed his arm and said, don't leave. Then I found a crumpled note in his pocket that said, meet at 7, don't tell her. He pulled away and left with his suitcase still half packed like he planned to sleep at the office. Then I found a boarding pass in his bag for a red-eye to her city, seat 12A. I followed him to the parking lot because my feet wouldn't move on their own. He got into his car, looked back once, and drove away. Then I found a voicemail on my phone from her asking where he was. I called his number until it went to voicemail and the recording played like proof he hadn't been telling the truth. Then I found a screenshot on his laptop of a message where he wrote he couldn't keep doing this and needed a plan. I sat in my car and shook until I couldn't anymore. Then I found a text from him 2 days earlier that said, "It's gonna be fine. Trust me." He left the city for a weekend and my parents offered to come over. I told them a vague story and asked for their support. Then I found out my mother had already known something for weeks. My mom's face behind her sunglasses when she arrived made my chest hurt. Then I found a receipt in her purse for baby shower decorations someone's bought for a woman at his office. She said she wished she'd known sooner because she might have stopped him. Then I found a long email in my inbox from a coworker asking if I was okay and telling me she had seen him at the park with a stroller. I decided to stay and wait for him to return. Then I found a voicemail from his sister crying and begging me to meet her at a cafe. We met and she slid a stack of photos across the table. I didn't want to look, but I did. Then I found a picture of him kissing the woman's forehead in a hospital corridor after a late-night check. She told me he had been helping with the baby because the woman had no family nearby. She said he'd been amazing. Then I found a photo of the same woman with our wedding invitation in the background. Her words felt like knives, but another part of me wondered if I had missed signs. Then I found a receipt from a fertility clinic with a card in his name. I asked if he told her he was married and she said no, he never said. She thought they were both single. Then I found an old calendar with his appointments scribbled next to the nursery shifts. I went home and packed everything I could fit into a suitcase in less than 20 minutes. Then I found a packing slip for a camera he'd ordered that recorded nursery footage. I left for my sister's place because I couldn't breathe in our house. Then I found a text he sent me saying, "I'm sorry for hurting you, but I have to fix this." My sister held me while I cried, like a person who had been awake too long. Then I found a handwritten note tucked into my suitcase that said, "If you come back, I'll explain everything." I stayed away for 3 nights and ate cereal at 2 in the morning while staring at the phone. Then I found an unfamiliar number called me and said we needed to meet face to face. It was the woman. She said she hadn't known he was married. She thought he was separating. She asked if I wanted to know the truth or if she should keep the secret to protect the baby. Then I found a silence so loud it answered for me. I told her I wanted truth and she told me everything she knew. He told her he and I were on a break. She said she had been lonely after losing her job and he'd been kind. Then I found a hospital bracelet with her name and mine, both written on it in faint ink. She said he'd promised to be honest eventually, but panicked when the baby came early. He'd asked her to let him handle it so he could figure out how to tell me. Then I found a photo of our anniversary cake on his phone with the woman standing beside him. She cried and said she didn't want to be the reason my marriage ended. I hung up and felt more broken. Then I found a voicemail on my phone where he left me a message saying he loved us both. I flew back home because staying away made everything feel worse. Then I found my neighbor had seen him carrying a box of baby clothes into our storage unit. I opened the storage unit and found boxes labeled nursery supplies, clothes, newborn, formula. Then I found a receipt with his signature for a hospital delivery room he rented for private visits. Confronting him felt impossible, but I needed him to say it. I sat at the kitchen table and waited. Then I found him at the front door, eyes red, and finally he started to talk without rehearsed lines. He told me he'd been trying to help and protect. He said the mother had been desperate and he couldn't say no. Then I found a folder on the table with printed bank transfers to her account for months. He apologized and said he hadn't meant to hide it forever. He said he loved the baby like a son. Then I found copies of texts where he wrote about wanting us to adopt the baby together. I asked why he didn't tell me when he first met her. He said he was afraid of my reaction and of losing me. Then I found a photo of him at my mother's kitchen table smiling while my mom gave him a casserole and he used her Wi-Fi to job hunt. I told him that fear didn't excuse lying and that he'd stolen our trust. Then I found a password-protected folder on his laptop labeled Rescue Plan with steps for leaving months before. He sat down and started to cry properly, the kind of helpless crying that had nothing to do with performance. Then I found a final page in that folder titled, "What to Do If She Finds Out." He begged me to listen and to consider forgiveness, saying he would cut contact and support the baby financially without being in her life. Then I found a contract drafted for child support and a notarized statement renouncing parental rights if I wanted them. I read the contract slowly and felt my anger change into something else. Then I found a message from the woman saying she wanted to raise the child alone and didn't want him involved. She had tested him as the father with the hospital and confirmed he was the biological father. Then I found a lab report printed with his name and a match percentage. I thought about the years we'd shared and the quiet nights and the fights that healed. Then I found my phone filled with photos of their life together that I had never seen. I told him I needed time and space, and he left that night to stay with his sister. Then I found a key he left on the counter labeled "For Emergencies Only." I went to therapy because my brain wouldn't stop replaying the nursery door and the crib and his smile. Then I found a notebook where I wrote a list titled "Boundaries I Would Not Cross." Months passed and we had hard conversations in offices and at kitchen tables. Then I found a mediator in my email who offered a course for couples navigating infidelity with a child involved. We tried counseling together twice, and I left twice after feeling gaslit. Then I found a ledger of payments he'd made to the woman for baby supplies with dates and notes. He told me he wanted to be honest and be accountable and that staying had been the hardest thing he'd done. Then I found a receipt showing he'd paid for the baby's daycare for 3 months. He asked if we could try to build something different that included honesty and limits. Then I found my own list of what I needed to feel safe, like full transparency and separate bank accounts. I said I would accept financial responsibility if it meant stability for everyone, but I wouldn't pretend the betrayal didn't exist. Then I found a check he wrote handing me a portion of his savings for my peace of mind. We set rules: no secret rooms, full phone access, weekly check-ins with a counselor. Then I found a locked folder on his laptop filled with receipts he hadn't told me about. He agreed to follow through, and I watched him start to keep no secrets. Then I found a note in his handwriting that said, "I'm doing the hard work, hoping you can stay." Sometimes he would come home and sit beside me without touching, and we would both breathe. Then I found a day when he surprised me by canceling all plans and showing up with coffee and nothing else. I learned to separate the baby from the betrayal because a child had no choice in any of this. Then I found myself volunteering at a shelter that helped single parents and realized I could protect my heart without punishing an innocent. Our life became new and awkward and slow. Then I found a quiet Saturday morning where we both sat at opposite ends of the couch reading, and for the first time since everything broke, it felt bearable. I still don't know if forever is possible, and there were days I wanted to leave permanently. Then I found a letter from the woman thanking me for keeping her child safe when everyone else judged her harshly. We never went back to how things were. Then I found a little corner of my kitchen where his coffee mug and my mug sat side by side and nobody pretended it was nothing. Some nights I still dreamt of the locked nursery door and woke up with my chest tight. Then I found myself telling the truth about those dreams in therapy instead of hiding them. He kept going to sessions, not to fix me, but to show he could be present and consistent. Then I found his phone with calendar entries for therapy appointments. Nothing else hidden. Months later, I visited the office one day on a whim and the nursery door was gone. Then I found a box of baby things in the dumpster outside the building labeled community donation. The woman sent a photo of her son smiling on his first birthday with his small hair sticking up. Then I found a single sentence in my messages that said, "I hope he grows up loved." It's still messy. Sometimes anger returns like a guest who forgot to leave. Then I found a day where we both laughed until our faces hurt and it felt like a small victory. I still don't know how to feel about everything that happened, but at least the truth is out.